good evening. I'm Oral Gibbes, and welcome to Oral Gibbes Live. And with me this evening, I have none other than former Minister of Education, Dr. Arrindell. How are you doing?
I'm fine, thanks.
How are things going so far with you?
Things are great. Things are great. New year, new attitude, gets better every day. Yes.
That's nice. You know, it's amazing. So many things are happening so fast these days. And education on this island. I know you was a former Minister of Education. You look back at things today. How you see things going?
In general and education? Well, I'm always the optimist that things can always get better, you know. Where they are, you know that people are making efforts. You feel that people genuinely care. But I'm always hopeful that things will get better. I just haven't been paying a lot of attention to what's happening in specific areas. But in general, I'm actively involved still in education in the areas where I see people. I'm working with the University of St. Martin on some projects, and I'm still very hopeful, especially where I see how the developments are taking place, especially in Statia.
Yeah. What are you doing in Statia?
In Statia, we're busy training the teachers and the administrators. Remember, they've just moved over to English as language of instruction in Statia as officially. And we are busy with a project at the University of St. Martin, training the teachers for over a year now. And the teachers are about to sit their certification exams this year. And so I'm optimistic there that we're going to see a lot of, you know, the same kind of positive results that we got in St. Martin with the introduction of schools like St. Dominic and with the St. Martin Academy, etc., and see in the long run what's going to happen in Statia. So I'm very optimistic.
So right now, everything in the classroom is taught in English?
Yes, sir.
All the subjects?
All subjects. English as a language of instruction in Statia. In Statia, they carried out 2 studies, and both studies, different people from different parts of the world came back with the same results, same conclusion. The language of instruction has to be the language of the student if you want the results. And the Minister for Education in the Netherlands made a decision that the teachers need to be certified by 2016. And so all the teachers in Statia have to go through the training for a year and a half. And at the end of the year and a half, and this is fully funded by the Ministry of Education in the Netherlands, and then they sit the certification exam this year in August. And then from there, they take off. So, but as of this school year, they've started introduction of language of instructions in the schools, and they're progressively moving towards, in the secondary school, moving towards the last class, and automatically in elementary school, they've already started.
So how long will you be working in Statia with the education department?
The contract ends in August. I hear there are discussions with the University of St. Martin to extend it by another couple of months. I don't know, because there are some teachers that came into the system afterwards that have not yet been trained or are coming in new school year, etc. And I'm hearing that they're in talks to extend that contract. But this one should end in August this year.
You know what's so interesting, Dr. Arrindell, is that it seems like in Holland they can make up their mind and make a decision, but in St. Martin it's like we can't.
Yes. We know what has to be done, you know. It's not that we don't know. I mean, St. Martin, I've been back, 1989, and I'm sure this has been taking place before, because I remember Dr. Anders Linda Richardson. I remember when she was Minister of Education. I remember the studies have been done in St. Martin for years now. But you're right, we can't seem to make up our mind. Every time the noise gets a little too much, or people, you know, people don't like to make politically unpopular decisions, you know.
Maybe too, you know, you was you were the first Minister of Education.
Yes.
And since that time, we had 4 ministers of education.
4 ministers with different ideas about language of instruction policies.
So in 5 years, 4 different ministers create
different ideas. And even before that, even before I came in, if you follow the history of language of instruction discussions in St. Martin, if you look at old newspaper clippings, if you go back and check your old video archives and stuff, you will see how we have gone back and forth on the issue, but never taking a firm decision and making not just the decision like in the Netherlands, but also making available the parameters under which it will be executed. So you make a decision, and then you have to decide if there's training that needs to be involved. A few years ago, when it was done here with regards to FBE, language of instruction in FBE, there was some training, but it was it was a project that was done on a very short-term basis, and I'm not so sure there was a lot of follow-up on it. But I know for sure in Statia, the way we've been executing, have a year and a half of training. We are following the same parameters that St. Martin, that DERPI used, which was the European framework for foreign languages. And so we're using the same framework, but the extra is that the ministry in the Netherlands has given the teachers and the school boards a certain period by which your teachers need to be certified. And then the University of St. Martin has gone out and sought cooperation with the Cambridge Center in Guadeloupe, and they're going to come in and do the testing, and so that the teachers at the end of their training will be Cambridge certified at a certain level to use English as language of instruction in the classroom.
When I started television in 1984, I had then Minister of Education for the Netherlands Antilles, Veres, Jacques Veres. And it was the whole issue in the 80s in St. Martin was mother tongue should be the language of instruction. Then in the early 80s, so you had the early 1900s. So you had the 80s and the 90s. And then, I was a big advocate for mother tongue English. And then I changed. I changed because...
You did?
Yeah, I changed. When I went to work for the government, I realized how important it was to understand and function in the Dutch language.
Yeah, but...
And then I also saw where, for example, today, you see people can't get certain jobs because they can't function using the Dutch language, so you have to bring in people from outside. So I believe in a system where there's a choice.
No, but I think you're confusing two things. And let me ask you this, and I will explain. The student that comes from the Netherlands to St. Martin, let's say the average high school or university graduate, what language do you think they went to school in?
How do you mean?
In their country, when they go to school in the Netherlands, what was their language of instruction?
No, but I think you misunderstand.
No, because I'm going to get to that, because mother tongue education doesn't say you shouldn't know Dutch. That's not what that says. The principle of when somebody uses the term mother tongue education, which still is used very loosely in our everyday discussion, it says that the child should go to school in the language of his or her heritage, right? But it never says don't teach the other languages.
I understand that.
And don't make it so that they're able to function in the other languages.
So then what's the problem we have?
That's what I'm saying.
We got to wake up and make up our minds what we want. Because you look at today, you as a Minister of Education, you should know better than anyone that if you look at government today, we are importing people to function in government because some of our people can't function in those positions because of the Dutch language.
No, we use that as an excuse, because who makes a decision what language we're supposed to function in? We are the ones that make that decision. Who makes it? Look at, for example, you have 2 official languages in St. Martin, right?
Oh, that's a joke.
No, and in the Constitution. But let's
be true. The Constitution is,
I agree
to me,
with
don't
you,
mean
but
anything.
I'm saying this is exactly why I think it has to do with decision. You've made a decision that you have 2 official languages. When deliberations and discussions take place in Parliament, they're all done in English, right? They're never done in Dutch, never. But you use the excuse that the laws and the documents are in Dutch to not use. Whose decision it is to determine what language the documents are to be written in and what language the country is supposed to function
in. And who's supposed to make that decision?
The place where laws are made.
But you see, this is where the problem comes in, Dr. Arrindell, because look, the thing is, you take, for example, the Netherlands. You get documents in English and Dutch.
Yes, but...
And their constitution doesn't even state.
Right.
But you come to St. Martin now, and what you get in St. Martin, and this is when people get angry with me, because we have a kind of a intellectual, bourgeois group of people who feel that because they know the Dutch language...
They are superior.
They are superior, and not only that, that they're going to make sure that only they know the language. And what you got in St. Martin today is you got a so-called constitution that states English and Dutch, but I'm sure even when you was Minister of Education, you will see a lot of things going out to the public just in Dutch, and everybody was satisfied
And you remember
with that.
the fights we would have
That's an
about
issue.
making sure they go out in English from the ministry. But getting back to the point, and this is why I think the Statia situation is a good example for us, because we know it and we have not gone the extra mile to implement. In Statia, like every other place, like the Netherlands, for example, you mentioned the Netherlands. Language of instruction in the Netherlands is not a discussion, it is Dutch. We know that.
Right.
But it doesn't say do not teach Dutch kids in the Netherlands English. As a matter of fact, I think I should have brought a book that I have that was produced in the Netherlands that talks about how to go about teaching English at a very early age. And it's called, I think English an Early Start or something, a whole document of research and discussions, because they recognize the importance of English as a world language and that their people have the ability to be able to master it. In St. Martin, we have decided that we are going to use 2 official languages, but we have not put in place the policies that makes one language of instruction, like in the Netherlands, and then a second or third or fourth or fifth or sixth language as a mandatory language, which is part of the policy discussions that I've been having. And so you make a mandatory second language, but you make sure that the teachers and the students learn it as a second language, so that the student who leaves the school in St. Martin is just as proficient in the 2 languages as the Dutch student who comes to St. Martin and is as proficient in both English and Dutch.
And that's a very important point,
Yes.
because you know what? And I always say, I think that the Dutch language is not taught the right way in St. Martin.
But I've been saying that for like 30 years now. But
So that is one problem.
and the English is not taught the right way either.
So what the hell wrong with us?
Make the decision. Language of instruction is this language. That's it. That's the one that would be taught as the first language, the heritage language. You use the word mother tongue. And then if the second language is equally important, you teach it as it is to the majority of the children in St. Martin as their second language. And the approach is different. And so the Dutch will be taught to the St. Martin student the way English is taught to the Dutch student in the Netherlands, and vice versa. And so when they leave the school environment, at least at the end of secondary school, they are proficient in both languages, but all their material was taught in their language so that they can function in it, so that they can be successful, so that they can grasp content, and then they transfer knowledge of subject matter to the next language.
Let me go a little step further, because this is your area of expertise. Mother tongue. So for the average person watching this show tonight,
Yes.
in the 80s and the 90s was
Yes.
all about mother tongue.
Yes.
If you're from Haiti,
Yes. See,
what's your mother tongue?
you see, that's exactly my point. That's why we use the word mother tongue very loosely. And I mean, linguists like to even talk about father tongue. Who says your mother should have, but it's a long story. The question is, we in linguistics and today I think more modern, the terminology heritage language. Everybody has a different ethnic or linguistic background, and your heritage language is the language you inherit from your parents, right? In St. Martin, I know the term is used to refer to the language of the population, the popular language. That's why in my book I refer to it as the St. Martin Popular Vernacular, being a dialect of English. In St. Martin, the language of the St. Martin people
And it's powerful, by the way.
is a very
Very
thank you.
powerful.
The language of the St. Martin people is English. And so when we talk about language of instruction, we say use the language of the people as language of instruction. Yes, Haitian, Suriname, Aruba, Curacao, wherever, the children whose parents are from those places will have a different heritage. And they should be, like in the United States, for example, encouraged to keep their heritage language. You want children and people to see language as empowerment.
But don't you think they're keeping it? I mean, I
They
see
keep it. They
I see
speak-
a
they
number
speak with
of
each other.
children that came from Haitian background and everything else.
They speak with each other. They speak with their parents in the home. They interact. And if they want to exclude you from the conversation, they will switch over and speak among
Some of them run in
themselves.
trouble too, then they understand that some of us can
but that's how language, that's how people are in the world, That's normal. That's a normal part of language
I want to
development.
come back because we're I think we're the most confused people right now on this island.
Yes.
I've been involved in television. Next month is 33 years in television alone, and 33 years of the issue of English and Dutch in our educational system. And St. Eustatius.
4 years.
You know, I just don't get it.
4 years.
I don't get it.
2012, but actually 2010 they started. But yes, and they made a decision. But that's the problem, the decision. Here in St. Martin, if you look at the history of language policy discussions, you'll notice that every time a group kicks up, like they did in Curacao before we went over to 2010, somebody gets a little nervous, the politicians get a little anxious, and they switch back, they revert. If you look in the last couple of years alone and you read what the newspapers have printed about different positions taken, you sometimes even see when people retract their positions because, again, you make a little noise if somebody makes a little noise, and it's not based on sound data. It's not based on what's best for the child. And this is the position that language teachers and linguists normally depart from. What is best for the child in the learning environment? That's the position from which we should depart, because at the end of the day, education is about the child. Education is about imparting knowledge. Education is about making sure when the child leaves the education system, he or she is able to function in the wider society.
But then people say, well, look at it. Dr. Arrindell, you're functioning.
Yeah.
You're a product of the old system.
Yeah.
That everybody is now.
But I could be so much more and so much better. I know that. I know I could have been. But not only that, not only am I functioning, if you look at the 100 that came out of that system, 1 out of the 100 or 10 out of the 100 doesn't mean the system is right. If education doesn't give the masses equal opportunity to succeed, then what's the purpose of your education system?
So that brings us to, what should I say? We have made some little changes. And say, for example, you have TKL, Dick, and all these funny sounding names.
Yes,
you're familiar with them,
the
right?
alphabet soup.
Personally, I feel that a system should be done away with. But then again, I'm not an expert in education.
I agree with you.
You know better than I.
I agree with you on that.
Why is it taking us so long to focus on this issue, especially when it comes to secondary education? Because it's holding our people back.
Yes, but it has to do also with your philosophy of education. If your philosophy is based on, and I'm using, you mentioned the TKL, etc. If your philosophy is based on a position that the majority can't all, I've heard educators say to me, for example, not everybody could be a doctor, or everybody could be a lawyer.
But this started from the premise
that everybody can't learn.
And which is wrong.
Which I agree with you is totally wrong. You know, if your position is everybody can't learn and every child can't be this, if that's your position, that's the kind of education system you're going to put in place. You put in place a system that allows you to weed them out, to go with the kind of Darwinian, the survival of the fittest kind of mentality. And that's the same education system that we have today. It's over 200 years, the philosophy, but we still maintain the premise that not every child can learn. Or the other thing that you hear is that he's good with his hands. He's good with his hands, or she's good with her hands. That means we shouldn't teach them certain subjects because something wrong with the brains.
But that's
that's a contradiction. If your position is, if your philosophy towards education is that every child can succeed, every child can learn, and therefore we're going to make sure we put in place a system that gives every child equal opportunity to learn, then you have a different education system. You build it based on a philosophy thinking that the things that make sure that they all get the same opportunities to succeed. Language of instruction plays a big role in that.
So, from your expert opinion then, the language of instruction, and I don't want to use mother tongue here, but the primary language of instruction should be English.
The language of instruction, from my professional opinion, should be English in all of the schools of St. Martin, both sides of the island. And then have very strong Dutch as a second language, French as a second language program. Even you hear some discussions about bilingual education, which is another thing to get to. but an opportunity to give all children the opportunity to be equally successful. And so if the average St. Martin child, regardless to who his parent is, regardless to where his parents come from, when he gets out on the playground, when he's with his peers, when he's interacting, what language does he use?
That's a powerful language too. That's a St. Martin English.
That's the language of the child. And that's the language you should be building on in the classroom to give instruction in other subjects.
But you know, I heard from someone the other day that the French side is actually worse than the Dutch side in terms of students going on to universities. I don't know if you've heard that.
I know that. We've been saying this. I mean, I've worked with Mustin Tons and Daniela Jeffrey and all for
really
years.
true.
This has been the discussion on St. Martin since I got back in 1989. Both sides of the island, we have high dropout rates of our students, and a lot of it is impediment because of language. We've been saying this for years. This is nothing new.
So so we know it for the last 25, 30 years. We're still here talking about it, and it looks like nothing is going to happen.
I don't know if nothing's. I'm an optimist. Else I wouldn't do the work that I do. I wouldn't continue to make the noise that I make because I have to believe that it has to change.
You look at Stacia where you are right now, working with him, right? Now, they're already decided for English. What about the legal system? Have they made any decisions what they're going to do there? How are they going to function?
It still stays Dutch. There's nothing wrong with it. That's why I'm saying there's no contradiction. Language of instruction. You know why? I'll give you an example. Take the average student from the African continent or the average student from the Indian continent, regardless of what country or what part of India, for example, what state in India, they have gone to school, the majority, in their heritage language or their mother tongue, if you want to use that, and probably another official language like English or French or whatever. They've gone to school, especially in remote areas, they go to school in their traditional languages. Right. But there's always a place, and some countries have like 8 or 9 official languages that gives all these children the opportunity. You take that average student and you let them loose anywhere in the world, and they're able to compete, to succeed, to dominate, and to be successful. The average high school graduate that goes on to college. You want to create that same product here in the school system in St. Martin.
So then in Stacia now, the young man that goes to school, he wants to go out and be a police officer. He can be a police officer without any problem, because in St. Martin, big problem is, they don't know Dutch. So we can't hire.
No, I've just finished a contract with the Justice Academy, and this is the argument. He needs Dutch to do what? When he arrests a person on the street.
Speaking of the Justice Academy,
I'm talking about a police officer now in St. Martin. When he arrests a citizen, when he interacts with the community, how much is he using Dutch? If you tell me that the student who comes into the legal system or works as a police officer needs to be able to read or to write technical reports in Dutch, then train him. Train him. He's trainable, isn't he, if he doesn't have sufficient Dutch, if that's the concern. But if you tell me in order for him to interact with his community, because that's what police officers do. They serve the community. They protect the community. They interact with the community. If you're telling me in order for him to do his job well as an officer, he needs to have Dutch, then I think we have the wrong St. Martin community.
What was the response?
Well, I think enough people understand it. The question is, what are we going to do about it? Understanding the problem is not the problem in St. Martin. I think most people understand, or most people want to believe they don't understand, but they know. They know what the problem is. What are we going to do about it? And who makes the decision? The decision-making apparatus is in St. Martin.
You know, I was born here, and I don't like to waste. I don't like to waste time.
Me neither.
I like to get things over and get it done. But I'm seeing something on this island that is very disturbing, because when the time comes to make a decision, you can't find the one.
And because, I might be wrong in this, but my position is that most people don't like being held accountable. I'm talking about politicians now, and the people who have to make decisions, and policymakers. They don't like to be held accountable. It's always easier to blame somebody else.
Yeah.
And now when you hold them accountable, it may not be very popular. And and bottom line, it goes down to votes. Votes. People will tell you to your face, nah, don't touch that. You lose votes, you lose popularity there,
But I think, Dr. Arrindell, our people, the people of St. Martin, need to be more conscious of what's going on in the education system in St. Martin and understand even what they're doing in the Netherlands. Now, I don't like to follow what they do in the Netherlands, but I can see them being very progressive, where their universities are giving now options for either Dutch or English. And here we are, still so confused. And even it's so difficult because you have our two high schools, the French and Dutch side, that are not producing sufficient students to go on to universities. We're heading for problems in the future.
Well, I know we have, and that's why I told you I'm an optimist. And I'm not singling out the schools, but you mentioned two high schools. I know when you look at the pass rate at St. Dominic, when you look at the pass rate at the St. Martin Academy.
I wasn't even thinking about
you see what I'm saying? That's why I'm bringing them into the discussion. But then you look at the decision that was just made at MPC recently.
That's why I'm coming.
And that is the right decision. And to be honest with you, you mark my word, if you and I live long enough, 20 years from now, you're probably going to see an all-English MPC.
But it was long overdue.
I know it's all long overdue, but people still don't want to lose, like you mentioned, the little privileges, the little sense of prestige that they think they have because they do it this way. But at some point, someone will see this is nonsense and change.
I had the president of the Teachers Union here, Mrs. Elshot, and when she said that none of the government primary schools, all the government primary schools, the language of instruction is English, right?
Yes, sir.
But then you had no government
secondary school. But the vocational school is government.
Yeah, but I mean, it's when you look at, say,
the quality education that you're looking at, yes.
So a lot of people were surprised and shocked because you have the primary schools, but there's no secondary school to continue in. Only now they're going to do it.
But that's because also a lot of people don't understand what is government school and what is not. So it's shocking. But if in terms of who actually, the board that runs the school, that governs the school. But because most parents, when you talk to them, they don't know that most of our school boards are not really, our schools are not run by government, so to speak, even though government guides to a big part, because a lot of them rely on government's guidance for their curriculum. But a lot of parents are not aware or don't yet understand exactly what it means when you say that, the schools are not public schools and run by government.
You see that, again, when you speak about education, this, again, disturbs me. I'm sure by the time this show's over tonight, we'll be lucky if 3 people call to ask a question. But let me ask you this, Dr. Arrindell. When you serve as Minister of Education, all the government primary schools were already only the English?
Always. Nothing has changed. Okay. Nothing has changed. You know what? And then this I don't want to use the word scary. When the position was taken by the last Minister for Education in the Netherlands Antilles, Omaira Leeflang, when she made a decision to reverse the decision of mother tongue education and say, we're going to leave it in the hands of the schools because of political pressure in Curacao, some schools in St. Martin went and asked for the opportunity to have it also reversed, so to speak. And so there was a window of opportunity. You had to have applied by a certain deadline. And so that's why you still have in St. Martin 3 elementary schools where language of instruction is still not English.
So then, what do you think then if, and a lot of people are now saying maybe there should be choice. You have, if I'm a parent and I want to send my child to an English school, I send them to an English school.
Yeah, but you know what, Oral? I would say parents would make the right choice if they had the right information and if they had the right understanding of how it will be done. When you say Dutch school in St. Martin, it is not a Dutch school. Let's be honest with ourselves. It is a school where, yes, language of instruction is Dutch to a certain extent. Right. When you see the interaction between the children and the teachers, between the children among themselves, between teachers among themselves, it is not the case. And the level of English that is taught in the majority of those cases leaves our children whose first language is English at lower than normal, so below average level of their own language. Now, if you want to reverse, let's say, language of instruction and make it Dutch, and then have a strong, let's pretend, ESL program, English as a second language program, because that's what you would expect in a school where Dutch is the language of instruction. You have to have a strong program where English is the student's second language, and a program to make sure that that child is at the level that is expected of a third grade or fourth grade in that language. And that is not what's being done in these schools.
Yeah, it's I don't know. It's
if you read this, if you see the average child coming out of these schools, they're way below level in their own language, reading and writing.
Well, I tell you, it's amazing because when you look at our education system, people are surprised that we have been able to still produce some citizens, but we could have been better.
Imagine what we could be like. Yeah. Imagine what we could be like.
I tell you what, Dr. I have to go to a break, but my still concern is I can't understand how they'll write the Constitution. They'll put in there that it's English and Dutch.
Because it sounded good.
Official language. And then the same governments now refuse to even acknowledge that is there. I have to commend MP Christopher Emmanuel at least for trying to force it in Parliament to remind them that, hey, you said in the Constitution it's English and Dutch.
But I think MP Sarah Westcott Williamson, she passed a motion that was supported, I think, by 9 of them.
Yeah, I don't know, maybe they did.
Yeah. So there was also that discussion that took
a motion?
Yes.
They make jokes about, you know what they call
I know. Well, we know the reality of the motion, but at least there was a discussion and there was a motion and there were some people signing off and...
I want to see it. I want to see it.
You want to see the motion?
You want to see the baby born?
Yes.
The
motion is not the issue.
It's so amazing because when you look at this island and you compare us with some of the other islands in the region, you've written a book on language. One so far, right?
Yes, one so far.
We have the House of Hessius published many books.
Yes.
And let me take this call for them, right? Oral Gibbes live on call. Hello.
Yes, good night once again.
Good night, how are you doing?
And Dr. Arrindell.
Good night.
I've been following your conversation very closely, and I have a few concerns about education. I'm not in the education field, but they said if you think education is expensive, try ignorance.
Yes, ma'am.
And unfortunately, I believe our educators are keeping these children in ignorance and darkness. So it seems to be a deliberate setup for the children to fail. My second question is, why don't we call a referendum for independence if we want to have English as language of instruction? I have a lot more things, but I'll keep it that short. Thank you.
All right. Thanks.
Wow. Thank you, caller, for those two very inspiring questions because to a certain extent, the first question, about the system being set up in dark for children to fail, the system, as I said, is based on a very outdated premise. The premise is that not every child can learn, at least in the secondary level, because on this elementary level, we've made a lot of strides, I must say, in trying to open it up and with regards to language of instruction. But when we get to the secondary level, we still are streaming children into these what we call streams or areas that, because we believe that they can't do anything else, and so put them in those streams. And then you notice a lot of our children, when they come out of those and they get opportunities, like you look at like a lot of them that are doing the GED programs, for example, on the island, when they go to the GED programs and they get the second opportunity to go on into college and university, you see them, you know, they blossom, because they've taken advantage of an opportunity that our system doesn't have, doesn't accept, doesn't acknowledge. But a GED is based on the American system that every person can become anything that they want to become if you give them the right opportunity. So you notice that when our students circumvent the system and they get into something like a GED program, you see they become anything that they want to become. So I agree with that. The second thing has to do with, why don't we call a referendum for independence? Now listen, I totally agree with a referendum for independence. Actually, I'd be the first to start to push the referendum for independence. And I think that's exactly what we are doing as the Independence for St. Martin Foundation. And so we believe very strongly independence has to come. We know that it will come. The question is, when are we going to push for the referendum? But I don't want us to confuse the fact that English of language of instruction has anything to do with being in or out of the kingdom.
Well, she was alluding.
I think that's where the caller was alluding to. And I gave you exactly the example of Stacia. But Sabre has been using English of language of instruction for years now. That is, in Sabre, the language of instruction in Sabre is English. Sabre is part of the Dutch kingdom. And you will look at parts of the world where that is normal, the language of the people. Now, the fact that people still are part of the kingdom should have nothing to do with English becoming the language of instruction in St. Martin. It's the same thing in Curacao, for example, or in Aruba, or in Bonaire, where people are have pushed their schools Papiamento as language of instruction. Or, you know, so that has nothing to do, it has to do with the people, the language of the people. But I totally agree that at the end of the day, English has to be the language of instruction in St. Martin. I am saying, I have always proposed in my language policy proposals, Dutch as a very strong second language, French as a very strong second language. I even say Spanish as a very strong third language. Because say what you want, the student of tomorrow, the student that is going to make it in the world in the next coming decades, has to be a multilingual child. And we know as linguists that children who speak more languages tend to do better academically in all other areas. So as linguists, we will never say, don't teach Dutch or don't teach French. What we're saying, the language of his geography, the language of his history, the language of his mathematics class should be his language that he understands. Why teach math and science in a language that's foreign to children when the language of technology is their language? That doesn't make any sense. So you have students in St. Martin that are failing mathematics. You have students in St. Martin that are failing science because they don't understand the language that they're being taught in. When their average mathematics textbooks, the average science books, they're written in English. And oftentimes they're written in English and translated into Dutch. So it's like what we call a double whammy. The child already speaks the language of the universe. The child already has the upper hand that his language is the language of science and technology. It is a world language. And then what you do, you teach him all his content material in a language that's foreign to him. That makes no sense.
One of the things I noticed too is something, it looks like, and maybe I'm wrong here, it looks like we don't give a damn, we don't care, and so parents don't care. And then you go to the school graduation and you see the results and you see the attitude and you ask yourself, it looks like nobody cares anymore.
You know what? If the parents are like my parents, I remember my parents when I was going to school. My parents, like I always say, they were both sixth grade education, but they recognize the value of education, and most parents do. And they're just happy that their children are getting an education. Most parents just feel that I sent you to school, that is the realm that you should educate my child, do your job. And they are expected. Not enough, though I agree with you, parents are involved in what is taught at school, how it is taught, more of us as parents can get involved because we have those rights. And a lot of times parents, especially parents who are from other places, let's say the rest of the Caribbean, they don't want to disrupt the boat, don't rock the boat. I'm glad my child is getting an education, leave me
some
alone.
are doing good, huh?
Yes, some of their children are doing good, but a lot of them could do so much better.
Look, I met a gentleman the other day at the airport, and he's from St. Kitts. His children are in Holland. They're doing well. They're working. They purchase a home, you know, and.
But they could have gone to China and done the same thing.
Well, maybe he was proud. He was proud.
You understand what I'm saying?
And I was happy for him. So I think some of these people that came to St. Martin from
wherever,
St. Kitts, Nevis, St. Lucia, their children did very well.
Well, yes, and some of them are not doing well either. I mean, it's the same thing. Some St. Martin kids are and some aren't. You know, what I'm saying is that every St. Martin child deserves the opportunity to go to China, to go to college if they want to go to Japan, just like the Japanese kids go to the Netherlands and the Moroccans go to Spain. And, you know, every child in St. Martin that goes to school deserves that exact same opportunity. The child that went to school in Japan went to school in Japanese. And so when he gets to the Netherlands or when he gets to France, he already has a sound base in his language. So if he were to express himself, he could do it in his language.
But who pays for it? That's the other thing.
His school system where he went to school.
Yeah, but here, look at it. You got your children studying in Holland.
Oh, you're looking at the cost of...
Yeah, the cost there.
Let me tell you something. That's a myth. That's a myth. What is cheaper? I've done a comparison of sending your child on government scholarship to let's say the United States or Jamaica versus sending them, let's say the Netherlands. I'm using the Netherlands because I have real figures. When your child leaves St. Martin and goes to the Netherlands, the government doesn't pay half as much as when they go, let's say, to the United States. Okay. But that's the government. That's not you. Your child takes a loan from the Dutch government. And your child is now indebted to the Dutch government to pay back that loan. The average St. Martin child that goes to school in the Netherlands and goes to school in the region, that's why we started the Studying in the Region program, takes about 6 to 7 years to complete the first degree.
6 to 7 years.
The average child to complete the first degree, the average 4-year college degree. The average 4-year degree that the student in the United States completes. When you calculate that in the number of dollars and cents or euros that child takes that loan for, compared to if that child gets a $15,000 government subsidy here, 60%.
I see you make the point.
Do you understand what I'm saying?
No, 60%. I know what you're saying.
And then you have a grant versus a loan. And then the amount that the child has to pay back, it's cheaper to go to the United States, for example, than to go to Europe. But we don't see that because upfront government doesn't pay that amount of money.
Because, look, and they get angry when I say it's a free plane ride to Holland, that's it.
It's a free plane ride, but it's cheaper for government to do that. And I can understand that because you have access to a loan in the Netherlands and you'll take it, but you're indebted to the Dutch government. Not even the government of St. Martin that you're paying back this loan to. You're paying back the Dutch government. So what we are doing is we're asking children to accumulate debts to the Dutch government.
No, let's go a step further. I was telling someone this and they told me it's not true. No, you're confirming it. It's cheaper to study in the U.S. and the region than in Holland, period. And that's because of what you just said. Our people
much cheaper in the region than even the U.S. The region, the Caribbean region. Again, we have the mentality that the schools in the region are not as good. Mind you, the same Caribbean region that has produced Nobel Prize winners. We've produced 4 in this region with the schools in this region.
You know why because we don't think we can produce anything. That's what happens.
We don't trust our own. We have these sometimes inferiority complexes. We don't acknowledge our own to be just as, it's sometimes even better. And because of our inferiority complexes in the region, most of the schools, the standards are even higher, because we want to prove that we can do it. But we don't accept that about it, so we prefer our children to go somewhere else where we believe bigger opportunities. And when we did the return on the investment study, we see that that's not true.
That's amazing. Look, You look at Puerto Rico right next door. I mean,
where I got my doctorate.
okay, they got all their financial problems now. But
Yes.
do you know most of the doctors in Puerto Rico, they never left Puerto Rico.
They never left Cuba. Where did Cuban doctors go to school?
But I mean, Puerto Rico just next door.
Right next door.
And
I got my doctorate from the University of Puerto Rico.
and why can't we send more? I'm sure it will be cheaper going to the Dominican Republic, you know, and so forth, than going other places. But
Yes.
for
Yeah.
whatever reason, we don't
Listen,
know ourselves in the
my
region.
master's degree that I got from the University of the Virgin Islands, master's degree, I paid $650 a credit. My doctorate degree that I got from the University of Puerto Rico, I paid $100 and about $80 a credit. Big difference.
It can't be there.
It can't be that. It's cheaper than the University of St. Martin per credit.
Wow. But see, I hope that our people will open their eyes and see what's happening to us, because what I'm seeing now, since St. Martin in this new political arrangement with the kingdom, since 10-10-10, and you listen to people in government and you listen to others who complain about problems that we have, I'm worried that we are not going to do well. And the reason why I say this is too many of our people, young, educated St. Martiners, are treated like they're not good. They should not come back here to St. Martin. They should go somewhere else. And this is another way you hear the government and people screaming that we need this, we need this, we need this. But then when the people are ready, the students are ready, they don't want to see them.
I look at it a little differently because, you know, when you understand the value of the education that you've received when you go off to college, you recognize that you can work anywhere in most cases. But of course, you want to work at home. Most of us prefer
How
to
do you
work
build a nation if you
without
have
your
own
people. So I totally agree with that.
That's my point.
The question is, when you say that people don't want to see them, if when I left, I knew that there was no vacancy, for example, for a doctor, and I chose still to do medicine, but I know there's no vacancy, then I can't be angry with anybody tomorrow if there's no vacancy when I'm done. That's part of my responsibility to make sure that what I'm studying for, there is a need for it back home if I want to work at home. I'm saying that we too have to also take some kind of responsibility for it. But now if you come back in a field that you know
wait a minute there, Dr. Arrindell. Wait a minute there. I was speaking with someone that you know very well, and I was shocked. And I'll give you an example. What's the industry in St. Martin?
But that's what I was going to go to. That's what I was going to go to.
We have people walking around this island with degrees in tourism, and they can't get a job.
Right. And
while other people come from all over the world and working in those.
I agree with you. And I've not only tourism in terms of
But
degrees.
I use it as an example based on what you just said.
No, I'm saying I was going to give that other side of the coin too. I said that's why I said I look at it a little differently. There are many sides to this thing. You have to make sure that you've done your homework as a student. So I'm looking at that. But when you get back here and you realize that there's an opening or there are spaces or there should be. I totally agree with you. I believe very strongly that St. Martiners should get preference. I'm one of those people that believe that St. Martiners should get preferences at home. I'm not into that politically correct thing that, it's no. Your home, you have to have the privilege of being a St. Martin should be that you get preference. Who's responsible for hiring? Sometimes our own people. Who's responsible for putting in place policies with regard to hiring? As controversial as that 2080 policy is in Curacao, with regards to hiring Curacaoians, they're discussing it, they're voting on it. We don't know what the result is going to be, but it is an attempt to address a situation or a problem that Curacao and Curacao politicians believe Curacao has as a country.
But when you get to that stage that you got to do that, I think then
it's scary.
Then that's a sign of weakness.
Yes.
Because I don't believe in the 2080 or 1090 or what have you. I think if you're from St. Martin, you're in St. Martin, you come first.
Yes.
If you qualify.
Yes.
Period.
Yes.
So there shouldn't
Yes.
be any quota. There shouldn't be, because when you do that, you create a situation like this right now in the United States of America, where a black person, very qualified, holding a position, it's looked at, oh, you only got there because of
Because of-
affirmative action.
Well,
and that,
If it weren't for
problem.
affirmative action, he wouldn't have gotten there in the first place. So let's be honest. If we're all starting from the same equal position.
but we don't need that in St. Martin.
No, but we all need to get equal opportunities, and this is what I'm getting back to. Curacao, there's a discussion in Curacao taking place. I think I agree with you, it's a sign of weakness, but you have to have the conversation about what the policy is going to be. It cannot be laissez-faire, anybody just do anything and hire whoever. I give you an example. You and I drive down the Simpson Bay Strip on a regular basis. When I look at people employed on that strip, in terms of when our boys and girls go for certain jobs and they tell you, oh, they're not qualified or they don't have the skills. When you look at some of the skill sets that some people employ in those places, and you look at some of the people you have to talk to the people at work, that you realize something is wrong with this picture. And who are the people responsible for executing the policies? Who are the people responsible for making sure that the law is enforced? And when they do go out and enforce the laws, who are the people responsible, you know?
I don't like to use the word policy because to me it don't make sense right now in St. Martin. What makes sense is where the economic power lies. And the economic power in this country doesn't lie in our hands.
And how do you get it?
And we had it many years ago and we threw it away. And the thing about it is we got to wake up and realize what we're doing. So when you go to look for a job,
Yes.
the person who's going to hire you is not going to be a person from St. Martin.
Right.
So most likely he's going to look for someone.
And how is that going to
wrong
change?
place.
How are we going to change that?
I'll tell you one thing. I know how I changed it for myself and my family. And you know what? I've changed my way of thinking now because I realize, unfortunately, I can't do it by myself.
Right.
I only can do for myself and my family. And you know what? What I'm saying to you right now, I would have never said 4 or 5 years ago. But now I see things differently. Unfortunately, all people are blind. They don't understand. They don't want to see reality. They think that they own this rock. They don't own this rock.
And this is why we have to have an education system that empowers them, that makes them and teach them the skills that they really need when they go out there, and to teach them entrepreneurship skills especially, and to make sure that we have places like banks and other institutions that open up opportunities for them, but also the policy makers have to make sure that these institutions that don't offer incentives to St. Martiners and St. Martin's people so that they can get these opportunities to get loans, etc., that there are some policies in place that deal with that.
You know, it's amazing because the younger people on this island, the young people,
It hurts, eh?
I'm scared that you, I'm not even going to say, maybe I'll let you say it. I'm going to pass on it. Something is wrong with the young people.
Yeah, they're
Remember what you were saying during the break?
Well, I'm saying a lot of young people, when I was talking to my group on last week, and I was pointing out different buildings who own, the ones that I knew, you know, where St. Martiners own businesses on Back Street. St. Martiners own, young people can't relate to that. They're shocked. And I remember saying, one of the youngsters said to me, so why did it change? Why did it change? And we have to answer ourselves, how did it change? Why did it change? And the question is, what are we going to do about it?
And you know what? Soon we won't be able to relate to having our own people running corporations.
Yes.
Because look how we're treating our own people when they're in position as managing directors of,
yes.
of the huge companies. Take, for example, airport, harbor, Gibbes, you name it. Soon that too will be gone.
The few that we were able to say they are ours and we're proud to have them, the way we treat them, you know, makes a lot of people think twice about doing it.
I tell you, Dr. Arrindell, you know, we need...
we need an overhaul.
I know you are one of the people that support political independence,
yes.
like myself.
Yes.
And look, I'm optimistic.
You have to be.
But at the same time, I can't try to change St. Martin for the better. All I can do is work on my own family.
That's good.
You know, and I do hope everybody do the same.
And all of us, and each of us, if each of us spread a seed, plant a seed and you make sure that your daughters and your children, your family, that they understand the importance of political independence. You make sure they understand the importance of being economically independent and being able to take care of your own. If we can keep duplicating that in every household, we're going to be okay.
But we got to let them know
Yes.
that education is the liberation of our people.
It is. Because it's either you inherit it, you win the lotto, or you get education. Those are your options.
Dr. Arrindell, thank you for being my guest.
Thank you
And
for this opportunity.
all the best. All right. And that's it for now. I'll see you next time. Till then, good night. Take care. Bye.